Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Earth Abides Season 1, Episode 2, though there probably is only one season, so I guess Season 1 is a bit of a misnomer. But the episode's title is The Space Between. The episode's description reads as follows. Ish finds a survivor, Emma. There's a spark. It is real, or are they just the last two people on Earth? Nature is unrelenting. Rats plague San Lupupo. I guess that's the pronunciation on that one.
I think it's just San Lupo.
San Lupo, okay. Ish dreams of rebuilding civilization, but can they even survive extinction? All episodes are written by Todd Kaminarki, and also is a showrunner. The episode was directed by Brandon Hughes, final effort for him on this series, I assume, unless they decide to extend it. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a Spoiler podcast. So yeah, if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on the platforms this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to the channel. All right, so I actually have some shout-outs this week.
All right.
I was actually pretty surprised by this. I didn't think we would get any comments. But Carla D says, hi, as someone who has read the book, I just want to correct you on one thing. Emma is in fact black in the book, and it's referenced music, education, appearance a couple of times. I actually looked into this a little bit further.
I did as well.
And there is, in fact, a interracial relationship in the book.
Yes.
Which is pretty surprising for a 1949 book.
Right. So apparently that was a big deal about it in the book, right?
Yeah.
And I think it probably has some deeper context about the last people on Earth bit.
Right. Yep.
But I did find at least one version of the book cover that shows a very white couple on the cover of the book. And I think that's what had led me to my prior assumption that we had changed that for this show. We
didn't really know anything about the book.
Right.
So, and we knew that it was in 1949.
Right.
Which is when this stuff was not exactly, it was significantly more frowned upon, to put it mildly, back in the day. So we kind of just assumed that there would be no interracial relationship and that would be something changed for the show. But apparently that's not the case, and that would put this book way ahead of its time, which is pretty cool. And then we have Sue Adams, who actually commented on the Spotify part of the podcast, which is one of the first times I've ever gotten a comment there. The last time I got a comment there was on the one of the Quantum Leap episodes, and they were asking if I was on Apple. At the time, I was not, but now I am.
All right.
Now we are. So she says, great recap, thanks for covering the show, good premiere, but she was also confused by the elevator scene that we were confused about, and she was confused why Anne wouldn't want to go away with the hottie to explore the world. Well, my feeling on that is that she was grieving the loss of her family, and that she, unlike Ish, had no such hope.
Right, she'd already made the decision that she was done. If he had found her maybe a week earlier, maybe he could have convinced her. Maybe we'd have a whole different story.
Yeah, perhaps. But I'm kind of satisfied with the one we have. All right, so Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode? The first time we've actually, well, not the first time, but one of the rare times that we actually watched a television show together.
For the first time.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm enjoying the series. Mm-hmm. And as I had suspected, we're moving a little rapidly through time. I think that's going to wrap it up even a lot more as we keep going.
This is like the exact opposite of the pacing of From, the series that this follows. Right.
So in From, we've gone 3 seasons and we've covered 3 or 4 weeks of material. And we have finished 2 years now in Earth Abides.
Yeah, so basically each episode is like a year long.
And I think that's going to exponentially grow quicker as we move past this episode.
Yep.
So in this episode, we meet Emma. We have a whole relationship with her. We create life. And we deal with some pretty big threats. So a lot happens in, a 60-minute hour of television.
It's kind of crazy that they managed to make the progression in the episode actually believable.
Yeah.
That they sell us on this romance happening and everything happening so quickly. Maybe it's just because it's basically a 2-man show and that we don't have to deal with, 10 other characters.
Right.
So.
And now we are going to meet more characters eventually, but in this episode, and I'll go to the cast now because that's a great segue. We, of course, met Ish last week, played by Alexander Ludwig, and we talked about him in the last podcast. This week, we meet Emma.
Yes.
And Emma is played by Jessica Francis Dukes. She was in 24 episodes of Ozark.
Which, by the way, I remember her part in that episode. I did not make the connection between the two of them. But when I saw the credit, I was like, oh, really? That was her, huh? Okay.
She was in 6 episodes of Jessica Jones. And I pulled out 1 episode of NCIS New Orleans with Scott Bakula.
Yes. The only other thing I have is an episode of The Good Wife as well.
Okay.
And, yep.
And those are the only 2 people in the episode.
Right. Yep.
That are credited, anyway.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty solid episode. I already spoke about how they handled the relationship between these 2 characters. There's some downright, horrifying sequences.
Yeah,
in this
there's
episode.
some pretty dark
Yeah.
scenes.
And you kind of
Multiple of them.
Yeah.
In this episode.
Which were kind of hard to watch at times. But, it was done very well.
It was, yeah, they did a great job with it. And, I didn't take any notes on, fan reaction to episode 1, but I do know I've seen some conflicting reviews from the audience that watched it. And specifically, I think I'm mostly seeing from fans who have checked it out because I'm seeing them comment in the from groups. But definitely a lot of people are liking the show. Yeah,
there's definitely some positive feedback. I think the ones that we were seeing negative responses from were the people who were already, basically saying that From Season 3 was pretty boring.
Right.
So if they think From Season 3 was boring, they're not going to necessarily like this television series any better.
I mean, they might.
Yeah, they could.
It's a different type of show. So
right,
you're gonna get different people, liking different things. But
all right. So do we have anything else to say before diving in?
In the previously on segment, I saw the MGM sign this time.
Oh, okay.
So you were telling me last week, and I had missed it. And in the previously on segment, there it was. They were definitely at the MGM Grand.
Okay, so I was not,
which is fitting.
I was not imagining that. Yes. I definitely saw that. All right.
Oh, one other thing I want to cover, just because it's in my notes here, before I forget to say it later. We learned in this episode that Ish is 27 years old.
Okay.
We don't get a specific answer for how old Emma is. But I figured she must be at least a decade older than him since she had teenage kids.
Okay.
And when I was looking up the book, based on that comment that we got and trying to be well, maybe I should look a little bit into this book. One of the things I found about the book is that she is meant to be significantly older than him.
Okay.
To the point where in the book, apparently he looks at her as a mother figure almost.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, she's meant to be significantly advanced in age from Ish.
Gotcha. I'm guessing that's not what we are being presented with here because she does give birth. And if she were too old...
Well, no, I don't think she's meant to be too old, but the fact is he's in his 20s.
Right.
And she's not.
So
she's already lived. She's had a whole life. She's had teenage kids. She's
we could say,
not somebody he would normally have found himself in a relationship with.
We could say that maybe she's 37 to 40 years old, and that would still put her within the ability to have children.
Right.
It would be getting to the point where it's a little bit more complicated, but it's still feasible.
Right. I mean, we saw her pictures of her kids in this episode, and they had to have been at least 14, 15, those 2 girls.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
So.
Yeah. All right, so the episode begins with Ish driving across town to the house where he saw the smoke. He approaches the house with a pickaxe in hand, but a woman on the roof points a gun at him and asks him what he's doing there. He says he hasn't seen anyone in forever, and convinced he's not a threat, she puts down the gun and lets him in. And
she says she's only been in this house for a few days. So she moves around, is what she does.
Right.
And she offers him tea.
Yes, I noticed that.
An interesting
that is a
tidbit.
From reference. They exchange some awkward, mildly flirtatious banter. He claims to like the tea, but doesn't really. And she offers him some honey and to trim his hair. He says, he suddenly is like, well, I should go now. And I'm like, why? You got plans? You have a hot date?
I think he just doesn't want to overstay his welcome.
I mean, I guess.
With this stranger he just
right,
kind of forced himself on.
Right. But yeah, so late at night she reveals...
But yeah, she wants him to stay.
Right.
So he stays.
Yes. Late at night she reveals that she chose this place because it was for sale and likely didn't have any dead bodies in it. And I think that's a pretty good call.
Yeah, so basically she travels along picking houses that are for sale and just kind of... She's living nomadically.
Right. She says she was sure she was going to die alone. They end up getting into his car the next day. He apologizes for no reason at all. basically for being happy. And she's like, oh, I have that effect on people. When he gets to his place, he says he never brought a proper girl home before. And she replies, well, what makes you think I'm proper? He straightens the place out once inside, and she ends up looking at the yard. And then he remembers to cut down the noose that he was planning to hang himself with.
He has a noose hanging in the hallway that he suddenly remembers is there.
Right.
And he cuts it down because, he doesn't want her to know that he was about to kill himself. So he really was at the end of his rope.
Yes.
So if he
that was a good one. I like that.
If he didn't see that smoke, he probably was about to do it. Like that day.
Probably.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. So she ends up checking out the pantry, which apparently mice got into. So they head to Dave's Discounts for traps and other things, and there's some dead bodies in there. He talks about going back later to get some solar panels.
And we realize they have very different shopping habits. He's
Yeah.
buying like all canned foods, and she's buying candles. Not buying, but taking.
Right, yes. There's no exchange of services here.
And the alcohol aisle is wiped out because Ish has been here many times before, and apparently he's been getting by drinking a lot.
Yes, and apparently eating year-old cereal, too, at the same time.
I mean, I'm all for it, especially after we see the alternative later in this episode. I'd be sticking with the canned pineapple and the old cereal.
Yeah, so they share a meal that I think he prepared, and she's unimpressed, saying it has no flavor.
Right, because it's old canned goods.
Right. We see a montage which includes Ish fishing, Emma is looking for nuts, and Ish is constructing something. We hear a monologue about him saying nothing could have prepared him for Emma. She was like a rescuing angel. And we eventually ends up seeing her give him a good trim, and he does in fact look much better now. And what he was actually building was a chicken coop, and she makes fun of him for how badly he did it. She wonders why they are still there. She doesn't believe in fate, nor does he, which she thinks might actually be a cosmic joke. And he ends up drawing closer, and before long, they're kissing, and this leads to more. And then I'm guessing this is where the magic happens that we discover later on.
Well, I imagine this continued happening after this moment.
Probably.
But yeah, we got to to see Ish naked again.
Yes.
Apparently we're going to do that every episode.
I guess so, but we also did get to see Emma naked as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And he finishes the night by writing in his journal, confirming that the monologues we keep hearing are meant to be his journal entries, as I had suspected they were.
In the morning, Emma wants some ice cream, and it's clear that these two have some chemistry together.
She mentions Jamocha almond fudge, which was my favorite childhood flavor of ice cream from Baskin-Robbins. I found that delightful.
Yes.
We got that reference. Because they're looking at that ice cream truck that is... So in the cul-de-sac of his house, his parents' house that they're in, there's an ice cream truck on its side, and they're speculating, like, how do you think that got on its side?
Right.
And they say maybe it was aliens.
Perhaps.
So we get an alien reference after all.
So at this point, all the ice cream would probably be melted.
Oh, it's been like a
Yeah.
year. It's been like a year and a little bit since then now. So yeah, the ice cream is definitely no more. But
Right.
I don't know if I mentioned this on air last week. I don't think I did, so I'm going to say it now. And I know I told you off air. Before I started watching this series, I don't know why, I was under the assumption that this was an alien story.
Okay.
I don't know why I thought that.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought it was. And
Maybe it has something to do with the title itself.
then when I started watching it, I was like, oh, wait, that's not what this is.
Right, yeah.
And then I paid attention to the trailer, and I was like, oh, this looks like a good show. So I found it funny that we got a maybe it was aliens joke in here, because that's literally what I thought the show was until I, sat down with it.
Right. Ish thinks they need power if they're going to stay here, and lists off all the things that they're going to need. He sighs and says it was easier before, and Emma points out it's not before anymore. He tries to start up the truck. It won't start. He breaks into someone's house to grab keys, and then siphons some gas from another one to get it started. And this is how he ends up getting the solar panels back to the house. While he's putting that up, he ends up falling and hurting himself, but not too badly. No broken bones.
He hurt his ankle. Emma bandages him up with a mustard poultice, and thank you, Quantum Leap. And the leap between the states is the only reason I know what that is. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have picked up or understood the fact that she's got a thing of mustard on the counter while she's doing first aid.
Right. Emma thinks that they could start looking for people. She misses people, noise, love, all that jazz. And at night, she gets up.
And she specifically says what they have is an arranged marriage.
Right.
In other words, well, we don't really love each other. We just are what we have.
Right. At night, she gets up and looks at pictures of what I presume is friends and family all gone.
This is her daughters and her husband and her parents.
And
what I presumed.
Yeah. She ends up reacting emotionally to this. And in the morning, she busts on him for not picking up on building solar panels faster. She asks if he can figure it out in 6 months. And he's like, why? What's the rush?
Yeah, he's like, are we keeping a calendar all of a sudden?
Right, yeah. And the reason why is she is pregnant. His immediate response is to start worrying about this. He's like, we don't have any hospitals, we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have any safety net whatsoever. And he basically just runs outside, kind of overwhelmed by the situation. He wonders how they can possibly protect the child. And Emma says that she needs him to believe in them and in a future. His response, go to the library and read books about pregnancy, which is his response to basically everything.
Yeah, he's an academic.
Yep.
So if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to find a book about it and learn.
Which is even more funny when he's...
as this episode goes on. Yeah.
So he returns to her still overwhelmed with a very different, happier attitude, though. Emma recognizes that she needs some meat.
He marvels that a real person is coming.
Right.
Like, suddenly he realizes, like, this could be a good thing. Mm-hmm. Also, chickens have come to the chicken coop.
Yeah.
Which they made a joke when he was building the chicken coop. Like, if he builds it, they will come. I'm really confused by this. Does that really happen? Why do chickens come to the chicken coop?
Did they not just go out and find chickens?
No, they looked outside and they're like, look, there's chickens.
I didn't think like a chicken coop was just an automatic attraction.
Right? I was confused
chickens.
by that.
Right.
I didn't get that part.
So, Ish offers to go and slaughter
So she's
a
in
cow.
her third trimester now.
Yeah.
So time has been progressing, even though we've only seen a couple scenes. She's big. She needs the meat. She said she's going to go hunting, but he's like, no, you know what? You always hunt. You need to rest. I'm going to handle it.
Right.
I think that was a bad decision, Ish.
Yeah, he attempts to basically shoot a cow, and he does this very badly. It ends up taking multiple shots to kill this cow.
To put the cow out of its misery after the first shot.
Right, and he's not at all happy to be doing this. And then he starts to try to dress the cow by reading a book, which is even funnier. Like that he's such an academic that he has to get a book on how to...
And read it as he's doing it.
Right.
It's not even like he prepared ahead of time, but he's reading the steps in the book as he's doing it, covered in blood.
Yeah.
This is a gross and gory scene.
And at the same time, it's extremely comical, too.
We're hearing the lines that he's reading in the book on what to do, step by step, and he's like, what the frick does that mean? And he's like arms deep in this cow, pulling out organs and things, covered in blood, and he is so disgusted that he's doing this.
And it was funny watching this episode with you and then watching your reaction to this scene. Watching as you're grimacing in disgust as we were watching it. So he ends up returning to Emma with the heart. He didn't do it very well, but she offers him to eat the heart, but then tells him to cook it, dumbass.
Yeah, like she was just kidding about you have to eat it. It would be, she says it would be really sexy if he ate it raw, and he's about to do it.
Yeah. She doesn't know how he got a girl like her with no sense of humor. He fires back with, eat your heart out. She doesn't appreciate the joke, but I did. I appreciated it. It was a nice try. And we see Lucky, like, trying to get the cow, like, getting up on his hind legs and taking a bite out of the cow. This is raw cow that he's eating at this point?
Yeah.
Is this bad for dogs?
It's not, as long as it doesn't have any diseases.
Well, let's hope that's not the case. So Ish finishes the solar panels.
Weeks ahead of schedule.
Yes, and then shows Emma what he's accomplished. But, as he's turning on the power, she found she found a rat which she drowned herself.
The rat was in the toilet.
Okay.
The rat came up through the toilet pipes.
Yeah.
And then she proceeded to drown it in the toilet.
Gotcha.
Which means trouble.
Right.
The rat coming up through the toilet seems like a really bad situation.
Yeah, they don't have enough traps, nor enough poison to kill a rat that size. And then the rats come, and this is a completely terrifying, horrifying sequence.
The streets are lined with hundreds of rats, all scurrying to their house, specifically. Yeah. Because it's the only house where anything's happening.
Right. And basically he says, for every rat you can see, there's hundreds more that you can't. So they end up shooting the rats with a gun, which I thought was insane.
They say they have to get rid of their trash, and they
Right.
start burning. So they go outside, they
Yeah.
start a fire, and they start burning everything.
Right.
That they think is what the rats are being attracted to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she's shooting the rats. He's dumping things in the fire. It looks like a very futile attempt.
Right. Yeah.
And then he says they want the cow, so he throws the rest of the cow in the fire as well.
And then they end up getting back into the house. They try to secure it with tape, which, there's a billion holes that you're not going to know about that the
Right.
rats are going to get into.
They're
but-
blocking all the doors and windows and the toilet.
Right. And then they realize, oops, we left the dog outside.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, Lucky's on the wrong side of the tape door, and he's being attacked by the rats. And I was really worried that first time that they were going to kill this dog off. They didn't.
Right.
And I know we're going to see the dog die soon because we're going to start progressing through time, and I'm sad about that. But if they killed him off right here and just let him be eaten by the rats, I'd have been really upset.
And I'm presuming your dog, Lily, would also be upset.
If I recall, she was pretty upset watching this scene.
Yes. It was hard for me to watch. Never mind. Yeah. So they get close. They end up getting the dog back inside. There's rats that come inside. Ish attempts to shoot the rats again, which seems really excessive to me. And then he just starts bashing them.
He bashes them with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
So he took some cues from Sullivan's Crossing.
Yeah. We just need Rob Shannon to come here and say, when I say you're done, you're done.
Yeah, those rats are done.
Yeah.
And he apparently, took care of the problem.
Right.
And meanwhile,
Lucky-
she went and mended Lucky's wounds,
Yes.
which looked pretty bad. Poor doggy.
Ish worries about her dying in childbirth. She mentions that she actually gave birth twice.
And had no complications.
Right. She lost both of them the same day to the virus. She tells her story, and Ish ends up comforting her.
Yeah, she didn't want to tell him because she wanted to keep them for herself.
Right.
And not share the memory. And then we get the overhead that we are now year 2.
The rats have been replaced by cats. And then after that, I expect to see Alf running around, eating the cats.
Well, so the cats come and they kill all the rats, but then the cats go into hiding. So I'm curious, are we going to deal with the cats being a threat still, or are we going to see the wolves come next?
Right, or the coyotes.
Now, at the beginning of the episode, and we didn't mention this up the top, the intro for the show.
Yes, yeah.
So, episode 1 intro, which we haven't mentioned at all, was of a bustling world, right? People
Yes.
and activity and cars. And we learned in this episode that we get a different intro. So I'm expecting a different intro each episode, showing us like how much the world has devolved based on what we're seeing here. So in this opening sequence this week, we were showing that what the world looks like without people. And basically animals and plant life have taken over. And they just showed a bunch of different animals just kind of roaming the streets and taking over. And one of the animals we saw walking in the intro was a pair of wolves.
Yes.
So I'm really curious, are the wolves going to come in horde next and be the next threat, having taken out the cats?
I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the penguins that we also saw in that opening. So yeah, we'll see. The cats are gone. Lucky and Ish tentatively go outside. No cats. Emma calls for him. The baby is coming.
But there's a complication.
Yes. The baby is upside down, which would be a problem even, with hospitals and doctors.
So the baby's not actually upside down. The problem is that it's kind of sideways. The shoulder is coming first. Now, if it was the feet coming first, they probably wouldn't have been able to fix it on their own.
Okay.
If it was completely upside down.
So let me ask you, because you criticized pretty heavily a scene in Sullivan's Crossing where the baby coming was way too easily. How do you think that this episode handled it?
They did a better job in this episode.
Okay.
They did, kind of insinuate that this is life-threatening.
Yeah.
And if we don't, work together right now, this could end very badly. So they acknowledge that.
Yes.
I would say they got through it quite quickly, but the fact that we got through, a year and a half in 60 minutes, you kind of had to go quickly.
Gotcha.
Right? Every scene is advanced time, right?
Yep.
So the fact that we didn't spend a whole lot of time on this scene doesn't necessarily mean it was too easy. It's just the pacing of this show.
So overall, you felt like the scene was done well.
I think it was done well. I don't have a lot of first-hand knowledge about, complications in childbirth, but
Thankfully, neither do I.
it seems like they handled it better than Sullivan's Crossing did, at least, because that was pretty terrible.
That's a pretty low bar to set. But
That was humorously bad, the way Sullivan's Crossing handled complications in childbirth. The shoulder was coming first, and it was blocking the head, and he goes to refer to a book, And she's just like, you don't get the frick away from that book and come help me. And he's like, I don't know what to do without the book.
Right, yeah.
It was really funny, like, their interactions during this. And he has these flashbacks of burying his parents.
Right.
So in this moment, he thinks he's about to lose her. He's going to be alone again. And she snaps him out of it. And she's like, if you don't come help me, I'm going to die. And this baby's going to die. So he pulls it together. He comes and helps her. She guides him in what to do. I do think maybe it was a little like she knew too easily what to do. She seemed very prepared for this.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she read the books, but like memorized them instead of needing to refer to them.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, they get through it, and a baby girl is born.
Yeah, and the child's name is Heather, named after his mother?
Okay, so I have stuff to say about that. So yes, the dialogue was, we named her Heather after Ish's mother.
Okay.
And he says, perhaps civilization will rise again.
Yes.
This is inconsistent, though. In the first episode, we see a medicine bottle that his mom had, and the name of the medicine bottle was Roxanne Williams.
Okay.
Now, we know Williams is the correct last name for Ish, according to the book character. So, if his mom's name is Heather, who's Roxanne? Whose pill bottle did she have if she's not Roxanne?
That's a good question.
And if the pill bottle was hers, and her name's Roxanne, why the heck are we naming the child Heather after his mother? I mean, maybe one of those is a middle name?
Perhaps. Yeah, that would make sense.
Like maybe her middle name's Heather, but that's what she went by, but her pill bottle has her legal name on it.
I'm not sure that we're going to
I mean, I just noticed this inconsistency since I had in the first episode notes noted her name down based on the pill bottle. And I was like, let me look at the book. I was like, what's her name in the book? And I was Googling and I couldn't find any reference. So I don't know if she's ever mentioned in the book. I couldn't find anything. Everything I was Googling just brought me back to the series when I was looking for Ish's mother.
Right. Well, it's on Kindle Unlimited, so we could just kind of look into it ourselves, I guess, and just start reading. But, yeah. So Emma laughs, saying that the whole rising of civilization thing is a lot to put on her tiny shoulders. Ish says it would be on all of their shoulders. He says he feels blessed.
Yeah, he journals that he feels blessed, and he feels silly saying that word.
And she ends up spray painting a message of where to find them exactly, the address, and that people live here.
Yeah. So in other words, they did decide they're ready to find other people, and someone sees it.
Right.
We just kind of see the profile of somebody looking at the sign.
I mean, you can't have a civilization rise with just one baby,
right?
And one just their baby,
right?
So even if they have another child, that's not going to work.
I mean, it wouldn't work very well.
No. And that is where the episode ends. And well done. Yeah.
I thought it was a great episode. I'm looking forward to see what episode 3 brings.
Yes, very curious.
I'm assuming we're going to meet more characters in the next episode.
Yeah.
I doubt we're going to meet all of the characters. I don't have the number in front of me, but the cast list is like somewhere around 8, I want to say. Yeah. I'm making that number up, but something like that. And so, yeah, I don't know if we're going to meet them all at once or they're going to sprinkle in throughout There's only 4 episodes left. It's a 6-episode series. So
yeah, and that's it. We're done.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, again, I feel like the timing's going to escalate quicker. I think we're going to meet more people. I mean, I was wrong this week. I assumed last week that we were going to spend a whole episode, like half the episode, just learning who Emma is, and then they meet. But no, if they met right away, and by the end of the episode, we already have a kid.
Right.
So...
Which again is ludicrously fast for a television show, but at the same time, they sell it pretty well.
They do. So my prediction is we're going to meet another person or 2 or 3. Spend a few minutes with them, and then we're going to advance some. Yeah. And then meet more people. Yeah. That's how I think it's going to go. I'm not sure, though.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying. Yeah. Like, this is one of those shows that you just kind of sit back and enjoy the ride, right? It's not a puzzle show. It's not like From, where we're sitting here trying to dissect it and figure out what's going on. It's just sit back and watch.
I think Ish might be Martin. And of course, nobody but us is going to get that reference.
Well, some people are, because there's definitely people watching both shows.
Yeah, and hopefully they're watching.
And hopefully some of them are listening to us. And if you are listening to us, and you do watch From, but you haven't heard our From podcast, go check it out. We have a huge playlist of From content as well on the channel.
All right. Anything else to say?
No. I'm just eager to see what happens next.
Me too. All right, we'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of the show? What'd you think of the podcast? Stacie can be reached at.
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.